The chair of this session is my good friend and colleague, Professor Pat Murphy of the Marketing Department. And he not only does marketing, but he's also quite an expert in ethics, written a lot about ethics in business. And so we're delighted to have him. It's all yours, Pat.
Thanks, Ollie. It's a pleasure to be here, and good morning to everybody on this, unfortunately, too typical South Bend morning. The title for our session is The Ideals of the UN Global Compact, a Value Added. And we have four of our colleagues from across campus here participating. And our first speaker will be James S. O'Rourke, who's Professor of Management and the Arthur and Mary O'Neill Director of the Eugene Fanning Center for Business Communication in the Mendoza College of Business. Jim has a Ph.D. from Syracuse University, teaches management and corporate communications. He's author of numerous books, including Management Communication, a Case Study Analysis Approach, now in its fourth edition. He's a trustee of both the Arthur Page Society and the Institute for Public Relations. Jim has class, so he's going to go first here, and we might take a question or two after his presentation. Jim?
Well, good morning. Apparently the applause follows the presentation, so thank you for that. No, please. Well, I'm delighted to be here. I have two things to say to you today. One, reputations matter. Two, reputations are manageable. The first is an absolute truth. The second is a relative truth. Reputations have always mattered. They matter now more than ever in a highly connected world in which people make decisions worth billions of dollars and huge market share based on their perceptions of who you are. The second truth is relative because you're no longer in control of the message. Globalization, technology, and stakeholder empowerment have now made it possible for people to have conversations about you and your brand without your permission and without your participation. I tell global executives, they're talking about you out there. It would be helpful if you listened. It would be even better if you participated. So let me pass along a couple of important distinctions. Some terminology, if I may, first. People use the words image, identity, and reputation as though they were interchangeable. They are not. Corporate reputation is an organization as seen by outsiders. It is not something you possess internally. It is conferred upon you by people external to the organization. Equally important, though, corporate identity is an organization as seen by insiders. It's how people see themselves. Who do you want to be? Who do you aspire to? Who are you in your own mind? And finally, corporate image is the tangible appearance of an organization to all. It's UPS brown trucks. It's the Golden Dome in the middle of campus. And if anybody knew anything about branding, I will tell you it was Edward Frederick Soren. He was visionary when it came to establishing corporate identity early on. Corporate reputation is a number of things. It is, first of all, composed of numerous key attributes. It's not any one thing. It's a number of different things. It is relative to the reputation of others. They can wax and wane relative to your own reputation, and yours will go up and down in accordance with how people see the industry, how people see your product or service, how people see the conditions in the market. It is usually quite enduring. It's unusual to see a reputation undone overnight. Charlie Sheen may be an exception to that, but it's usually true that strong brands, strong reputations are tough to undo. You've really got to work at it in order to, look at Toyota. People still greatly admire Toyota today, and they struggled mightily to explain unintended acceleration along with a number of other things. All of this, of course, is based on public perception. That is what people think of you. Let me tell you what corporate reputation is not. It is not objective by any stroke of the imagination. You cannot lay down a ruler and measure it. You have to ask people what they think, and what you get in response is a subjective reply. It is not easily measurable. It changes quickly from one constituent to a next, and it is not uniform across all of those constituents. Some will love you, some will not, and in many instances you just have to care about who it is that loves you the most. So a definition perhaps from my friend Charles Fumbren at NYU. He calls corporate reputation the outcome of a competitive process in which management signals its firm's key characteristics to constituents to manage its social standing. And that's the key phrase, I think. It's what you do to signal or manage your social standing. What actions do you take? It's a function really of who you are, which in turn reflects what you do, which in turn is perceived by others, and which again in turn shapes who you are. This is really, if you will, the virtuous cycle of corporate reputation, or we would hope it's virtuous. There are a number of attributes that people will say are important to corporate reputation. Let me offer you these. There are 9. I think I've said 8 in the heading. There are actually 9 on this list, and it used to be 8. These are the reputational factors that are measured by Fortune magazine. And this week, their most admired list just came out. Apple Computer is at the top of that list. And these are the criteria that they assign weights to, and these are the criteria they ask people to think about. Innovation. General Electric spent $100 million on a campaign called Innovation at Work. Why? To be better perceived as a more innovative company by those who matter to them. If you ask General Electric employees, they'll say we're rockets to the moon, we're 4D imaging systems, we are among the most remarkable developments in the history of mankind. You stop a guy in the mall and you ask him about General Electric, he'll say light bulbs and toasters, neither of which General Electric makes anymore. So the desire to be perceived as innovative is very high. It is interesting that people management now is one of the more important items, the weightier items on the list, along with your use of assets, your social responsibility, the quality of management. Does this matter? I think it matters enormously. As long as Steve Jobs is alive and well and on the job at Apple, they're going to do well in this category. If you look at companies that finished dead last in this survey, Trump Resorts and Casinos International finishes consistently dead last in the quality of management. And this is a fellow who tells us he's running for president, so plan accordingly. Financial soundness, long-term investment quality, the quality or perceived quality of your products and services, and your global competitiveness also count. There are issues affecting reputation management, and you can see the list here. One of these that stands out for me is CEO reputation. A friend of mine by the name of Leslie Gaines Ross conducted a comprehensive long-term study on CEO reputation and found a correlation of 0.4 with corporate reputation. So for better or for worse, the reputation of a company is inextricably linked to the reputation of its very senior leaders. I think that builds a cult of hero worship. You know, if you ask a CEO, would you rather get a Malcolm Baldrige Award for quality or have your photo on the cover of Fortune magazine, they'll pause for a moment and say, well, you know, Fortune really is good for the company if I'm on the cover. You know, the Baldrige Award will just gather dust in the corporate lobby. They're aware of the importance of their own reputation and its link to corporate reputation. Let me note as well, situational events can affect the reputation of a company. I think the nuclear power industry is going through something of an existential crisis at the moment, largely due to events beyond their control. These things happen and they come and go, some not easily forgotten. I don't think people will easily forget the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. And those situational events do affect how people see corporations. At the center of my paper, and I encourage you to read it, are 7 factors which govern reputational management. Let me just quickly share those with you. Corporate reputation is a manageable, strategic asset. I think that's the most important takeaway. Reputation management requires regular, sustained investment. And in order to manage reputation, you must first analyze risk. Where are you most at risk? Where is it in your corporate policies and in your performance that you are most at risk for reputational damage? So, careful planning follows risk analysis. To manage reputation, you must measure reputation. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it. Now, I'm aware that John Milton in the 17th century said, if we are unable to measure that which is important, we will ascribe importance to that which we can measure. I do understand, however, the importance of measurement here. 6, accountability for reputation is a senior management function. It is not something simply to be delegated to the staff. And finally, withdrawal or retreat may be your best option. So, to conclude, good corporate reputation can lead to enhanced shareholder value, always important, enhanced financial performance, improved business partner relations, and one of the things I would say about BP's residual damage in the Gulf of Mexico is they're having a very difficult time trying to get business partners to take on risk, to drill for oil they own in various risky parts of the world, including Siberia just now. Not as many people want to take on that kind of risk. It can also lead to happier and better employees, better customer loyalty, better support and credibility in times of crisis, and of course the achievement of key business objectives. It's difficult, but it's not impossible to manage. There are people out there who will agree to help you with it. Successful companies usually have strong identities and pretty high perceived product quality. And good reputations, because of their inertial qualities, will often allow organizations slack resources during mediocre performance periods. So it's something management honestly needs to pay careful attention to. Patrick, that's 15 minutes. Yes.
Thank you. The weighted factors from Fortune magazine, did you list them in order of weight?
That's a secret.
So you'll have to kill me after you tell me.
Yeah, well, if I knew. Father Malloy and I had a conversation about this, the former president of the university. We were actually talking about university rankings. And universities are just as concerned about reputation as corporations. And Father Malloy said to me, you know, Jim, they tinker with the algorithm every year. And I said, how do you know that? He said, if the results were the same year after year after year, there'd be no reason to print the survey. If the survey varied wildly, if schools in the second 100 suddenly rocketed into the top 10, no one would believe it. So very slight variations every year become the mode. And all we know is that Fortune does reveal what the characteristics are that they survey about. They just don't tell us what weight they give to them. So companies trying to game the system have to guess.
As a public person in one of the largest multinationals in the world, the Catholic Church, I don't want to put you on the spot, but we're at an all-time low in reputation. What do you think they did wrong in the pedophile scandal and the cover-up and what have you?
Well, there are kind of two things. One is a kind of micro issue. The other is a macro issue. I think the micro issue is they ordained a number of the wrong people. When vocations to the priesthood began to wane, In the 1970s, they threw the doors open to the seminaries and invited in anybody without a lot of scrutiny. And I think, having gone through the difficulties associated with becoming a United States military officer, I know how tough that was. I wish it were just as tough to become a Catholic priest, if not tougher, because the responsibilities in many ways are so much greater. What I would leave you with on a macro level is this. There are 3 characteristics to a successful corporate communication program. That is, if you're managing your reputation, you need to think about 3 things. The first is sound policies in the public interest. If your policies are sound, if you are doing the right thing, good. The second issue, however, is competent performance. You have to execute on those policies. The third issue is actually communication. So communication comes third. First, you've really got to have the right policies. Second, you have to execute on those consistently. And then third, you have to tell people what you're doing. I think if I could draw an analogy from the crisis in Japan right now, the people I've spoken with say one thing consistently to me about life in Japan this morning. They say, I don't know who to believe. The government says one thing and then does another. They say things are okay and then they're not okay. And as a result, trust is broken. Once trust is broken, it's very difficult to earn back. And in some cases, if the trust is so profoundly broken, you may have to wait a generation or 2 in order to earn it back. And so what I would say, Ollie, is the Catholic Church is a 2,000-year institution. Let's give it another couple hundred years and we'll be past this.